as Palestinian American organizations, it needs to be part of our job, and what we do is to educate the Palestinian Americans that lives across the United States about the importance of supporting Palestine and bringing and establishing many projects in Palestine, while also becoming part of the political system in the United States. And what I mean by that, we want as many Palestinian Americans as possible to become, let's say, city council members or mayors or perhaps elected school board officials.
While the Israeli occupation army is committing crimes against the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank, public solidarity and advocacy for the protection of the occupied unarmed people of Palestine against the fourth strongest army in the world, the Israeli army, is becoming imperative. To talk about the importance of solidarity and advocacy, I have with me the President of the U.S. Palestinian Council, Dr. John Dabeet. Welcome to our program, Dr. John.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your program tonight.
Thank you, Dr. John. You're visiting Palestine, visiting your family, your relatives, your friends, to enjoy your time with them and see the beautiful side of Palestine. But what's happening today is really painful to every Palestinian and to every person who knows Palestine and the people of Palestine. Just 4 days ago, Israel killed 46 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, injured over 350. Today, a new massacre against our people in Nablus, in North occupied West Bank. How do you feel as a Palestinian American visiting Palestine?
Well, first of all, I would like to ask for God's mercy on our martyrs, the Palestinian martyrs. And also, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for also giving the injured a speedy recovery. Our heart as Palestinian people, regardless where we live, continue to bleed for a long time. We have been witnessing massacres against the Palestinian civilians and Palestinian people for over 60 years now. And this nonsense must stop. And it must stop by ending the Israeli brutal occupation of Palestine. Our job as Palestinian American communities, leaders, organizations, is basically to carry with us the true narratives of Palestine and the Palestinian people and share it with the politicians, the people in the street even, our friends, and so on. It is important for all of us as Palestinian Americans to be an ambassadors for Palestine. It is important because the public diplomacy is becoming extremely important in the United States in order to share our narrative with the American public. Now, obviously, on the other hand, also it is important to work with the U.S. administration. And what I mean by that, the White House, the State Department, and Congress on same issues. We cannot sit down. It's not an option for us. And when people say it is very difficult and impossible task, we say there's nothing impossible. I always believe that we can make a difference. We can change as far as we work together and as far as we continue to advocate for our people in the United States.
Yes, Dr. John, we saw many demonstrations in different states in North America in solidarity with the Palestinian people against the Israeli crimes. But I know that you are a member of the Central Committee of the Democratic Party on behalf of Iowa State. Do you see these demonstrations in a well-organized context, or they are just seasonal? And if they are seasonal, what is required from you as Palestinians living there and activists pro-justice and pro-Palestine? What is required from you to structure that and organize it?
Excellent question. We, as Palestinian leaders in the United States, we always call for a kind of work that is continuous kind of work. We don't want to do something because there is an event or a major event in Palestine. We want to continue our advocacy, our connection, our meetings, our demonstrations in the streets and so on all the time, because this is how we basically spread our message, spread our narrative with the American public. But also, if you allow me to say that, as someone who was elected recently, around 2 months ago, to the Iowa Democratic Party Central Committee, that puts me on top of the policy-making arena in the state of Iowa when it comes to Democrats. And I will guarantee you that Palestine will always be around the table. Everyone in that Central Committee, all the politicians that we receive from all over the United States, including the administration, gonna hear that from us. This is part of what we should do. And that's why I always encourage Palestinian Americans to participate in the political system if our intention is to change. But also, let's remember that the new generations, and what I mean by that, the American new generations are changing. For example, a couple months ago, the Democratic Party in the United States ran a study. And part of the results that is very important and very vital for us to know about is that they find out that almost 65% of the new generations in the Democratic Party are standing more with Palestine and the Palestinian people. This is a great result that we need to build on in order, again, to further our work on behalf of Palestine,
yes, and
also
this,
in the United States.
Dr. John, leads me to a relevant question. How we can translate this public support and this change at the public opinion level into political action? Because, you know, the people in Palestine are frustrated really by the American position when it comes to Palestine, Israel. Just days ago, the State Secretary of the United States said that Israel has the right to defend itself while it's murdering children in Gaza. So do you think that it's possible for the Palestinians there and the activists to translate this support into political action?
Indeed, it could happen, because there's nothing impossible for us. But we also, as Palestinian Americans community and organizations, are very disappointed by the official and political stand of the Biden's administration, especially in a time where we expect them to stand up and say enough is enough, and they should push Israel to stop their criminal acts against the Palestinian civilians. But to go back to your question, I see two answers, or two routes, or two ways to achieve what you suggested and what you asked about. We can work on the political side, directly with the administration, State Department, Congress, and this is a well-needed political work that we as U.S. Palestinian Council, that has that legal status, which is 501c4 in the United States, that allow us to do that kind of work with them. Not any organization can do that. You have to be licensed to do that. You have to be licensed to lobby Congress and attend meetings at State Department and so on, officially. So that's a kind of work that we need to continue, and we're not going to stop. On the other side, I think, which is becoming very effective way of sharing the narratives of the Palestinian people, is to work on what we call the public diplomacy level. Because that public diplomacy level is allowing us to get to people very quickly, talking to them, sharing the narrative, sharing the story with them, and getting them to also become almost an ambassador for us. And they will start defending us and standing with us and participating even with the demonstrations that we see in different parts of the United States. We created some sort of a partnership with Arab Americans, with Muslims in United States, with also minorities such as the African American minorities, Hispanic minorities, those groups of people who stands for justice, and those groups of people who stands for also the freedom of the Palestinian people. Also, we should not forget our work also with, for example, Jewish Voice for Peace. They work very hard in the United States with us, and we work with them in order to reach the politicians, in order also to spread the narrative, the Palestinian narrative with the American people. So this kind of work is becoming more crucial. This kind of work is becoming more important and vital in order to share that. So we cannot concentrate on one without the other. I see them as a complement to each other, and we see them side by side. We should work on both sides at the same time and move forward that way.
Yes, Dr. John, you have the American citizenship, the American passport, okay? You're now living here in Ramallah, which is about 15 minutes only from Ramallah to Jerusalem, but you can't go to Jerusalem, though you have the American passport. Now, when you go back to the United States and tell the people you know, your friends, the officials there, that you have been to Palestine, but you were not able to visit Jerusalem because you're of a Palestinian origin. How would this message be received by the people there?
Well, we should share that on different levels. Politically speaking, with State Department, I participated in writing a paper for State Department over a year ago in that regard. We see the Israeli entity discriminating against, in particular, against Palestinian Americans. In the United States, and according to the Constitution, all Americans are equal. It doesn't matter whether you are a Palestinian American or German American or Russian American or whoever. We are all equal, and we need to be treated same way. Unfortunately, we are not treated equally, and this is our message to State Department. Also, that was our message at the White House meeting on July 6th, when we met with Jake Sullivan, who is the chief security advisor for President Biden. We raised this issue because, again, as an American citizen, we should be treated all equally. But when it comes to the Israeli entity, they discriminate against Palestinian Americans. And as you mentioned, I have been here almost a month, and up to this point, I'm leaving on Saturday in a couple days, and up till this point, I'm not allowed even to enter into Jerusalem. When we share these stories with the American publics, they will be enraged. They will be extremely upset to hear that as an American citizen, we are not allowed to go to Jerusalem, which is, as you mentioned, around 10 miles north of Ramallah, where we are at this point. But the problems here is that we expect the US government, we expect the State Department to continue to push the Israeli entity to treat Palestinian Americans as such as any other Americans. Otherwise, it will continue for us to be a case of discrimination against us. It will continue also to be a case of a human right. It is my rights to travel safely from one point to another. And this is not the case when it comes to Palestine. We travel, we have to deal with checkpoints, we have to deal with the mood of an Israeli soldier that wanted to let us move or return back. It cannot continue this way. And all these things stem from, again, the major issue, which is the occupation. We need to work very hard to end the Israeli occupation, because Palestinian people, in our eyes, deserve to live in peace, deserve to have their own dignity, own justice. They deserve to govern themselves. They deserve to have free access to education, to health, to movement from one place to another without the Israeli occupation or brutal occupation telling them you are allowed or not allowed to move from place to place.
Yeah, and my final question to you, Dr. John, a lot of effort is required really to help the Palestinians end the Israeli occupation for their land, enjoy freedom and independence, justice, as you mentioned. How do you see it's possible to mobilize the Palestinians who live in the United States and who, like, well off, they have their businesses, they have their companies, to support the Palestinians in the occupied land by investment, providing economic support, because we are talking about institution building now.
Yes.
So how can the Palestinians living in the United States be part of the process of building here?
I think the first point is education. And as Palestinian American organizations, it needs to be part of our job, and what we do is to educate the Palestinian Americans that lives across the United States about the importance of supporting Palestine and bringing and establishing many projects in Palestine, while also becoming part of the political system in the United States. And what I mean by that, we want as many Palestinian Americans as possible to become, let's say, city council members or mayors, or perhaps elected school board officials, or perhaps state legislators, or even on national level, such as the Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. But also we want them also to take very important and essential spots within the political party, within the Democrats and the Republican. And without doing that, it will be very hard to change the system and the policy. But we are seeing that more and more involvement and more determinations on behalf of those organizations and leaders and people that is moving us forward. Perhaps we are moving slowly, but we are moving. And I think we still have a way to go. We're not there, we're not done. I mean, and that is very important, because once we feel that we are there, guess what? Yeah. We're going to sit down. And that's not an option for us. We want to keep going. We want to keep fighting for the freedom and justice for Palestine. So my summary of that will be, from here, I call on every Palestinian Americans to be an ambassador for Palestine, to get involved in the political system and political life in the United States, and also at the same time to continue to support Palestine in any way they can.
Dr. John Dabeet, President of the U.S. Palestinian Council, it has been a great pleasure having you in our program. Thank you.
It is my honor. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And from me, Osama Nazal. Have a nice time.